Hi, sixth grade, it's Miss Frannis, and today we're going to be talking about research, and hopefully you've been viewing those PowerPoints that I put up. One was about MLA citation and how to do a works cited page at the end of a research paper, which seems really confusing, and that's okay, because we're gonna really focus on this, we're really gonna focus on that this year, and we're going to break it down, and we're gonna do citations for a bunch of different sources. So don't worry about it if you're like, oh, I'm so confused. You should be, because this is all new to you and it is kind of confusing. And the second PowerPoint I hope you viewed was about plagiarism and how important it is to put things in your own words. And if you find a cool statistic or if you find an awesome quote, that you quote it and you make sure that in your works cited page you give credit to where you found that information. Even if you wrote it in your own words, you still found that information somewhere, so you have to rewrite it, and then you have to cite that source on your works cited page. And I know this seems a little confusing, and it is okay, because we're gonna spend the whole year on this. And you're thinking, oh no, the whole year? Oh, but by the end you are going to be MLA citation pros and know exactly what MLA citation is and how to do your research. So today, we're talking more about plagiarism, and this is avoiding plagiarism rule 1. And it says, when presenting a fact that is not a common knowledge, always cite the source. So I'm going to read through this, and it's going to seem a little confusing, and then I'm going to break it down and show you how easy this really is. So it says, how does one determine what other people typically know as common knowledge? Common knowledge is knowledge relative or common among people or a group of community. A piece of information known to some may not be known to others because they do not share the right commonality. A simple way to consider what may or may not be common knowledge is to think of what groups people consider common among their family and our friends, but not necessarily their community. Consider how much variety there is within religion, ethnicity, age, social grouping, media exposure, education, work clubs, teams, classrooms, etc. All of these are held in common with some but not all. Now consider the audience to which the information is being presented. Where is their commonality and where is there none? Now answer the question, what is common knowledge? So that seems super confusing. It's like, I don't even understand what they're saying, but it's super easy. Common knowledge is things that everyone knows. So for example, George Washington was our first president of the United States. That is common knowledge. Everyone knows that. If it's found in 3 or more sources, that's considered common knowledge. And believe me, if you look anywhere, you know that our first president was George Washington. So that's common knowledge. It's things that everyone knows. Another example is, unfortunately, the anniversary of 9/11 is coming up. So on September 11th, 2001, America had the biggest terrorist attack on US soil. That's common knowledge. Everyone knows that. So you don't have to cite that source if you are talking about that in a research paper. And remember, this is only for research. If you're just writing a book for yourself or a fiction book, you don't have to worry about citing any sources, because fiction books, of course, are made up. Now, if you're doing a nonfiction book, then you probably would have to cite your sources. So it's anything where you're looking for information, where you're trying to look for information and then use that for your research. So that's what common knowledge is things that everyone knows. Another example is Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Well, we all know that. That's common knowledge. So things that everyone knows. So this may seem a little confusing, but basically that's what common knowledge is. Things that everyone knows. And if you're ever not sure, just cite your source. So assume that you're writing a research paper on the classic book To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee for English, which is a great book, with the idea that the teacher is your audience. So your teacher is your audience. So you have to think about that. It's not the general population. So the teacher knows a little bit more because they are the teacher, and plus some of the questions you're going to know are common knowledge anyway. Identify which statement below requires citation and what does not by writing a Y for yes. So a Y means that yes, you need to cite your source, or an N for no, which means nope, no citation is needed. So be prepared to explain your decisions. And we're going to go through this and we're going to talk why it is the way it is. I'm just going to pull this up a little bit here. So the first one is Harper Lee author of To Kill a Mockingbird, is an important 20th century American author. So, does that need a citation or does that not need a citation? So yes if it needs a citation, no if it doesn't. Let me give you a second here. If you answered no, you are correct. Most people know Harper Lee is a famous author. She was just in the news a few years ago. They found a manuscript by her that was kind of hidden away and that was published. So a lot of people know who Harper Lee is. So that's common knowledge. People know that she's a really popular author in the 20th century. So you don't need to cite your source on that one. 2. Harper Lee was born in 1926 in Monroeville, Alabama. Is that common knowledge? Do you need to cite that source for why for yes or nope? Nope, I don't need to cite it because it's common knowledge. If you answered why for yes, yeah, you need to cite that source. I mean, I didn't even know where Harper Lee was born or what year she was born in. That's something where you would actually have to research and look that up. So you would have to actually put this source, wherever you found the source, let's say you found it on, in the encyclopedia, World Book Encyclopedia, you would have to put that on your works cited page at the end of your research paper saying, I found this in, the encyclopedia, and there's a way to cite that source, and we're going to learn more about that later. So yeah, we would need to cite that. Number 3, in To Kill a Mockingbird, Lee depicts the injustice of racial discrimination. Do you think that requires a citation or not? If you answered no, you are correct. This is common knowledge, and remember who your audience is, it's the teacher. Plus, anyone who knows even a little bit about the book, which a lot of people do because a lot of people have to read this in high school, they're going to know that this has to do with racial injustice, and it has to do with Scout, so the daughter of the lawyer Atticus, and so we know that there's a big problem there with what is going on. So yeah, you don't need to cite that one because 1, your audience is your teacher, remember, and 2, a lot of people know this book, so that's going to be pretty common. Number 4, the novel's narrator is a child named Scout and the daughter of a lawyer named Atticus. Do you think that is common knowledge or not? So does this need a citation? It'd be Y for yes, or nope, it doesn't need a citation. If you answered N for no, and if you paid attention to why I said number 3 is, remember, your audience is your English teacher, and the paper is being written after you already read the book. So a lot of times the general plots are known to people, especially if you're writing it as a paper and your teacher is the audience. So that's common knowledge. They're going to know what the book is about. And most people know what this book is about anyway. Number 5. Southern society at the turn of the century was a hierarchical, that's a hard word to say, with income, family lineage, and personal accomplishments among the measures used to establish social rank. Oh my goodness, that's a mouthful. So by looking at that statement there, and by how hard of a time I had saying it, do you think that this would require a citation, or do you think it would not require a citation? If you said yes, you are correct. Because I don't know what I know a little bit about Southern society in the 50s, but I don't know like a lot. Didn't live in the South. I grew up here in Nebraska. I was born in the 70s. I don't know much about, that time period other than what I would read in a book. So this would have to be cited, and then you would have to put that citation in your research paper. Number 6. Although To Kill a Mockingbird is a work of fiction and Lee denied that it was autobiographical, the character of Atticus shares many qualities with Lee's own father, who practiced law in a small town in Alabama. So, thinking about that for a second, would that require a citation? Y for yes, nope, N for no. If you said yes, you are correct, because you would have to research that. You wouldn't know much about Harper Lee's life unless you researched it. So that would have to be cited on your works cited paper or your works cited page at the back of your research paper. And number 7, common knowledge or not common knowledge? That is the question. Neither black nor white women during the 20th century had the same freedom as modern American women. Yes for yes, it needs a citation, and for no, it does not need a citation. N is for no. Neither black nor white women during the early 20th century had the same freedom as modern American women. And that everyone pretty much knows. Way back early, women just got the right to vote. We're just celebrating the 100th anniversary of that. So obviously that was early 20th century. So women just didn't have as much rights as they do now. So that is common knowledge. So no, you do not need to cite that. So here's a couple things to test yourself. Situation A and situation B. Situation A, To Kill a Mockingbird is a favorite book and you have read much about the topics related to the novel. You happen to know from your reading that Harper Lee based its character Dill on a friend, fellow author Truman Capote, who wrote Breakfast at Tiffany's, by the way. You have no idea where you found this information. You just remember having read it or heard it somewhere. Does it require a citation? It does require a citation. This isn't common knowledge. You wouldn't know that unless you read it somewhere. You'd actually have to go back and find the source. So you'd have to do a little research and digging if you wanted to use that in your paper, because you can't just, just put it in there and say, I heard it somewhere. You have to actually find that source. So yeah, you would have to cite that. Situation B, you have taken a U.S. history class and remembered being taught that Paul Revere was actually captured by the British outside of Concord before he was able to finish his ride to Lexington. Your friends who were also in the class remember hearing this as well. You want to include it in your paper about the Midnight Ride. Does it require a citation? Yeah, again, it's not common knowledge. So you would have to find that information, go research that, find where you got that, and then put it on your works cited page. So I hope this helps you a little bit understanding what common knowledge is and what common knowledge isn't. And if you ever have any questions, please remember you can always email me, and I'll see you next week. Bye.